Hello, it's Katrina Russell again, and I started to talk a little bit about health, mental health in the last video, and I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Um, the mental health crisis in this country is insane, no pun intended. We need to revamp the mental health system. It's not taken seriously. My ex, my son's father, was a drug addict. He was in and out of rehab and institutions and everything else since high school. He was, 20 years, something like that, in and out of him. And with him being an addict and trying to figure out as much as I could to try to help him, I did a lot of research on it. And what I found was, people, I gotta turn on the air conditioning. People don't believe that it's a disease. They think it's a choice. And I think it's a little bit of both. When I used to talk to my son about it, I used to say things like, Da made a bad choice. Because, he did. It was his actions. The part that makes it a disease is that once you start taking drugs, it literally causes brain damage. And it kills synapses, and you can't think as logically as you once could. It makes it more challenging. And it's not just the regular addiction ones. You have to retrain your brain completely when you're dealing with an addiction, and that's a different type of thing. This is also the drugs themselves cause the problem. And in my research, I've realized that, it can take over a year for these synapses to grow back and for your brain to be able to think more logically. And my son's father would go to rehab for, 2 weeks, maybe 30 days. And then they'd say, okay, you can do outpatient. And yes, it would dry him out. And he would, he'd feel better. It would dry him out. He wouldn't have the physical addiction manifestations. He wasn't having the withdrawals. He wasn't getting sick. He wasn't whatever. But it didn't mean that his brain was in any way fixed. And as long as he kept busy, and as long as there was nothing that set him back, there was no anything, a good day, a bad day, or something. If there was nothing that sparked, he didn't run into somebody, he didn't see something, he didn't go someplace, a movie, a song, anything could do it, could trigger it, because it would spark something in his brain, that next thing you know, this is all he could think about. And it amazes me, because he would, over the years, he probably spent, I don't even know the amount of times he went into rehab, and it was covered by insurance for a week, and that was it. And then he'd be kicked out, and then he'd have to do something else, and then it would be another time, and then it would be another time. And I don't think, and I remember when I was finally done. And I said, we can't, my son was getting older. He assaulted my son didn't assault his mother. My son's father, got high, assaulted his mother. It was a big mess. He got arrested. He was still high. He came back. He tried to jump a fence. He broke his leg. It was a big mess. He got arrested again. And I remember being I'm done. We need to fix this. This is not, let him dry out in jail for a couple of days, drop the charges, and let him back out. He needs to go away. And I started making phone calls, And there was nothing that would take him for like more than 30 days. And even 30 days was a stretch. And I talked to his mother and I said, I think there's a place, don't quote me, but I think it was like Utah or something. And I was like, and I think he should go there. And I don't remember if it was 6 months, but it was something that was longer. And I'm like, he needs something like 6 months to a year. He needs that. He needs to really go away. And she got mad at me. She thought I was just trying to get rid of him. He can't be away from his son for that long, and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, look, he's not getting better. I'm fuzzy in my mouth. He's not getting better. He's getting worse. I'd rather him go away for 6 months to a year and come back clean. We can visit. We can, I think at the time I was saying Skype, even though that, I don't even know if that was a thing like 3 years ago. That was old by then, but we can talk to him, we can do whatever, but if he doesn't get clean, like really clean, he's gonna die. And she did not want to hear that, and I don't blame her because it was her kid, but she was so mad. And I was like, this, if we can find, I don't care where it is, like, let's figure this out. Let's figure out if we can pool our money to pay something. But there was nothing around here, and she didn't want to send him away, and she didn't want to believe that it would take that much. She's like, no, he'll be fine. He's been away for a little while. The drugs are out of his system. So I said, if he's not going to do this, if he's not going to take it seriously, if he's not going to go away for a really long time, we can't keep doing this. So that's when I finally decided to take him to court. We did a whole custody battle. There was check-ins, there was this, there was that. We had monitors. And it was almost 2 years. And finally, we agreed that I would still be supervising because I didn't trust him completely. But I would still be supervising. He could see, but we would get rid of the monitors and then we'd move on from there and see if he could handle without my supervision. And so we finally agreed to all that and finished out court. And 2 weeks later, he was dead because he didn't have the courts monitoring him anymore. And then going through his stuff, I realized that he was not as clean as we thought he was. That even though he was living at a sober house, he had a frequent stayer card at a hotel that he would stay at to get high. And he was taking weird other kinds of supplementy things to get high. I didn't realize this. He told me this years ago, because he came home high, and I was like, clearly you're on something. And he was like, no, I didn't take heroin, or he used to double up on his Suboxones, or sometimes it would be benzos, whatever. But he said he didn't take any of that, so it was totally legal because he took like a whole bottle of anti-diarrhea medicine, which apparently can get you high. So, and clearly never poop again. But it was okay that he did that because it was legal to do that. And I was like, but see, it's not a matter of being legal. It's a matter of the fact that you're a drug addict and you can't take drugs because, there are people who can. I used to dabble in drugs before my son. I'm not going to lie, but I could handle it. Just like alcohol. Alcohol's legal, but if you're an alcoholic, you can't drink. And he was driving. He came back from wherever he came from high. And I was like, and that's not legal. Even if you're allowed to drink, you still can't drink and drive. That's not legal. So it's not the legalities either. It was the keeping his brain in a constant messed up state. And because he would dabble in all these other things, his brain synapses never reformed properly. So even though it was almost 2 years, it was still, the moment he got a second, actually even the week after, he showed up for a visit. And I could tell he was messed up. But we had plans to go to a local, Canopy Lake. It's a local amusement park. And so I said, I'm not going to mess this up for our kid. I'm there, whatever. And there was a water park there, and he went, and water went up his nose and came out, and blue came out of his nose. And our kid was like, why is your nose blue? Why are your boogers blue? And he tried to blame it on chlorine. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure chlorine's clear. It's basically bleach. But, so I knew he snorted something. And turns out he was buying pills and like Oxycontin and snorting them. And when I talked to the police officer after he died, turned out the police officer who got assigned to his case was one of my friend's brothers. So that was helpful. But now my nose is itchy talking about that. No, I don't snort things. I never did. I think it's creepy. But anyway, so he told me, so the police officer told me that Oxycontin has a blue coating or something, time release coating, and that's probably what it was. He crushed it so that the coating was gone and got the stuff inside. So, and the thing that it is I called him on it, and I said, this is not happening again. Acknowledge it, move on. Because it's the only thing you can do. Acknowledge it and move on. You can't, dwelling on it is not going to help. I was hoping it was just a one-time thing. So a week later, I got a call from him that he was not going to be able to make it to our kid's karate because he was in a car accident. Turned out he overdosed. And he crashed his car, and he was in the hospital, and he lost his license. And I told him that thank God he was driving, and thank God he didn't kill anybody when he was driving, but thank God he was driving, because had he been home alone, no one would have called the police, and no one would have known. And might be getting a very different phone call. 2 days later, knowing that he had just overdosed, he went back out. Not even today, the next day, he went back out that night on a bike to go meet up with his dealer. Got another pill, took it that night in the middle of the night or whatever. And the next day, I got that call. I got the call that he had died in the middle of the night, and no one knew and no one checked on him. And I had to tell our 6-year-old that his dad was dead. And all I can think is, if there was a 6-month or a year program that he could have gone to that really could have let his brain refocused, really could have taught him coping mechanisms, because that's the thing. Most addicts, they start so young, they never really learn coping mechanisms. So when something happens, their first thought is, let me just get drunk or high. I don't know how to deal with this. Let me just get drunk or high and not deal with this. And no, they don't teach that anywhere. They don't teach coping mechanisms. They don't teach life skills like that. And I think that if we really want to take drug abuse and opiates, especially opiate abuse and opiate addiction and overdoses, it's not just where I live. I live in New England, where it's pretty prevalent, but it's everywhere. And if we really, really want to fix this, then we have to fix it. Everybody wants to, that's why drugs are a thing. Everybody wants to band-aid the problem. Everybody wants to, he was a drug addict, and he went to, he'd go to doctors, he'd go to this, he'd go to that, he'd talk about his addiction. They diagnosed him with bipolar disorder because he told them that he had times when he was crazy up and he was times when he was crazy down. Right. Those are also times when you were using drugs, where you're tweaking, you're booming, you're zooming, you're doing. Has nothing to do with mental illness. My mother was schizophrenic. totally understand mental illness. This was not that case. It was the addiction that was causing those symptoms. I do think he was also diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I do think there was some of that, because he had serious problems with all types of relationships, that whole thing where the relationship is going to save him, which is very common amongst addicts. They're constantly looking for a savior. They're constantly looking for something to fix them, anything to fix them, because they can't fix themselves. And I think that if we want to help curb the opiate epidemic, the suicide epidemics, even the mass shootings. I mean, that's a cry for help. Even in a horrible way, it's a cry for help. And I think that we need to seriously revamp our mental health industry. All right, so I wasn't planning to talk about Neil the whole time, but apparently that's where I went. So I talk about this kind of stuff a lot, and how the government's screwing everything up. So if you like what I have to say, like, share, subscribe, do all those. I'm trying to point to the buttons down there. That's where you should do it. Anyway, and thanks, and have a nice day.